Good morning, everyone. I would like to start by greeting the public and also my esteemed colleagues here in the panel, and to thank colleagues for the invitation to be here. I'm really glad to speak at such an extraordinary conference. So my presentation is about disinformation and political polarization in Portugal. I intended to cover several subjects: the Portuguese context, key concepts, the role of digital platforms, disinformation in my country, disinformation in Spain. This is clearly too much, so I'll do my best, and I hope we can talk at least about the most important topics. So, the Portuguese context has seen a rise in political disinformation in the past 6 years, which has been extraordinary. Our political disinformation accompanied the political polarization and the meteoric rise of our right-wing populist party, a party called Chega. So right-wing authoritarian populism made a late entrance in Portugal. In 2019, they had one deputy on the parliament, so it was an insignificant party. In 2025, they were the second largest number of deputies in the parliament and the third most voted political form. So in 6 years, they went from one deputy to 60 deputies, which is, it's mind-boggling. I wouldn't believe it if I were told this would be happening in 2019. And this happened also on the back of disinformation and social media campaigns. So our last elections in Portugal were for electing the president, and we had two rounds, a first round in January and a second round in February 8. The second round had the populist candidate from Chega and António José Seguro, a socialist candidate. And what happened is Democrats voted massively for the Democratic candidate in this second turn, so the socialists gathered almost 67% of votes, and the populists get 33%. These results on the second turn show us it's a testament of the high level of political and social polarization, but it was a huge relief for most Portuguese, at least 66% of Portuguese people, that the populist candidate didn't really win. So the right-wing Chega party has been the amplifier of disinformation in Portugal, acting like a kind of disinformation trumpet. In 2019, I would publish in a study with a colleague of mine, Batista, that in fake news, anti-immigration discourse and fear-mongering were not prominent content. This was true in 2019, but it's not true anymore, sadly. So, we define populism as a rhetorical style of communication claiming that the only legitimate democratic authority flows directly from the people, and that the power holders are deeply corrupt and self-interested, and they have betrayed the public trust. These authoritarian populists, they prioritize social conservatism, order, customary traditions, defense to strong leaders, and social stability. We have another strand of libertarian populists, but that's not the case of what's happening in Portugal. Ventura and Chega fit the bill for authoritarian populism. As disinformation, I follow Claire Wardle's report to the Council of Europe of 2017, where she considers disinformation information that is false and deliberately created to harm a person, a social group, an organization, or a country. This includes false context, imposter context, manipulated and fabricated content. Our spreaders of disinformation also fit the bill for this Wardle classification, and this is mostly the activities they engage in. Polarization refers to the process whereby people increasingly perceive and describe politics and society in terms of us versus them. Affective polarization, which is the most common, manifests as outgroup hostility and tribal behavior. This is all true for our populist party. We have another strand of polarization, which is ideological, and it's rooted on rational divergence and policy preferences. So this affective polarization carries negative consequences for democracy, like partisan double standards, tolerance for norm violation, and, in the long run, an increase in corruption, mainly because of this tolerance for norm violation and this double standard in politics, which we can see, for instance, in the United States. The standard with which Trump is evaluated by their supporters is very different from the standard they evaluate their opponents. This is true also, albeit in a not so larger scale, in Portugal. So populist actors promote a polarizing narrative as they seek to reinvent and exacerbate social divisions. The disinformation discourse, it's mostly supported in hatred, fear, fear-mongering, outrage, and, well, basically fear. Chaos helps populism grow. This is an unfortunate truth. So the relationship between disinformation and polarization is self-reinforcing. Disinformation fuels polarization, and polarization makes people more vulnerable to disinformation. Disinformation tends to exploit strong emotions like fear, anger, outrage, resentment, because emotionally intense content circulates faster on social media. Polarization favors disinformation because people tend to consume information aligned with their beliefs and reject dissenting facts. And they share content that is in accordance with their confirmation bias. We have then a media ecosystem where social media amplifies this relationship because algorithms prioritize engagement, controversy, and emotional content. So polarization and disinformation receives more views, more shares, and has greater reach. The more polarized a society is, the easier it is for false content to circulate and to be believed. And I think this relationship, it's true everywhere when we have these two forces working together. So regarding the Portuguese media landscape and the Portuguese case, traditionally Portugal has a very high trust in news. It was the country that most trusted news just a few years ago in 2019, and even now it ranks 7th, but is ahead of Germany, Italy, Spain, and many other countries. So our trust in news has declined. We were first, now we are 7th. But it's still high. The Digital News Report says Portugal has a hybrid news ecosystem where the media landscape combines traditional consumption model with television, radio, and print, and has a rising digital dynamics, especially among younger generations. Trust in news is still high, and brand trust in news, so trusting news from brand and legacy media is even higher. It ranks among 70 to 79%. And this trust in news correlates positively with concern about disinformation. So 79% of those who trust news are worried about disinformation. As I said earlier, right-wing Chega, the right-wing party, is the amplifier of political disinformation in Portugal. Scholars from Labcom, Branco de Fátima, and ISCTE Media Lab, José Moreno, for instance, use the metaphor of the disinformation trumpet and say disinformation with this right-wing populism works in 3 stages. First, content is created by a small account with minimal reach. Then there's a phase of intermediate amplification, where a mid-level actor picks it up and shares it, giving it the first boost in reach. Then a high visibility actor, a party leader, a major account also shares this disinformation, and the content reaches mass audiences within hours, outpacing any fact-checking response, indeed any possible response. The metaphor of the trumpet is very good because the instrument is narrow at the mouthpiece, its origin, and wide at the bell, at the mass reach. And the shape captures the asymmetric amplification. A small input produces a disproportionately large output. So André Ventura, he never creates disinformation. He jumps mid-wagon and amplifies this disinformation. And so, though he never does this, this creates, the fact that he jumps mid-wagon, creates space for plausible deniability if it were the case, if he were to have to deny any of the disinformation in which he is engaged. So in 2025, the LabCom report on electoral disinformation showed Chega produced 81% of all disinformation during the electoral campaign, and this was a 160% increase on the 2024 European elections. The most frequent tactics were fake polls, circulating unregistered and shady polls designed to show a false electoral lead. These polls and these lies would also be noticed by mainstream media, which for the public that it's not that attentive might even give them a credibility that they didn't have. Other important tactic was media delegitimization. This was very important. They target journalistic credibility and they framed outlets as political biased and corrupt. And they do this systematically in order to disenfranchise and corrode trust in news. So it's no surprise that trust in media in Portugal has come down since 2019. So the impact of these tactics is very high, and it shows that the disinformation trumpet really works. Other two studies regarding disinformation in Portugal from iVerifier and Obercom show also that Chega dominated online communication and amplification, that they had more reach and engagement, and amplification by powerful actors played a major role in disinformation virality. Now, and unlike in 2019, immigration is the central axis of electoral disinformation, surpassing the original theme, which was corruption. And the targets of this anti-immigration stance are communities from Southeast Asia, Bangladesh, India, and Nepal, and they are framed within narratives of great replacement and also Islamization narratives. Although we don't have a large Islamic community, most of our immigrants are Brazilians, and Brazilian immigrants are Christians, and they speak Portuguese. They are almost Portuguese. Within 5 years in Portugal, a Brazilian becomes almost indistinguishable from Portuguese, so we don't have a big immigration problem. Electoral fraud became, this is very curious, an emergent topic within this disinformation discourse. And this is very strange because we never had problems with elections and fraud in elections. What this shows me is there are talking points, international talking points, that are being circulated through disinformation right-wing central, because electoral fraud it's an important topic in the United States, it was an important topic in Brazil, but there is absolutely no reason for this to be a talking point in Portugal, and now it seems that it is. One of their most dangerous tactics is malicious cuts in short videos, and this is the most concerning format. They are amplified across platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and this makes it very hard to be debunked. Disinformation in Spain is characterized by a strong polarization, political conflict, and in-group identities, by the convergence of emotional rhetoric based on fear, anger, and outrage, by heavy use of social media, conspiracy thinking, and institutional distrust. Also, strategic platform use, creating a high-impact, low-cost communication environment that reinforces polarization and undermines trust in democratic institutions. We can see this is a complex setup and a more mature ecosystem than the Portuguese ecosystem. Although the Portuguese studies were centered on the electoral disinformation, and these Spanish studies that I used have a wider reach, they are not focused solely on political disinformation. So what is common between Portugal and Scale? The scale of disinformation, it's different. Portugal is a more smaller ecosystem, and disinformation, massive disinformation, is more recent. In Spain, we have a larger ecosystem and also more mature, denser and more professionalized ecosystem. Portugal has a higher trust in mainstream media and institutions, while Spain has lower trust and stronger media skepticism, and this is not about to change. Political fragmentation in Portugal is more moderate and consensual. Our political environment, it's not so aggressive, while in Spain we have stronger polarization and territorial conflict, and also because of the autonomies and certain territorial specificities that verify in Spain but not in my country. So our main historical subjects were corruption and anti-establishment rhetoric. Recently it is immigration, Islamization, and replacement theories. And while in Spain we have national identity, Catalonia, and anti-immigration rhetorics. The tactics are slightly different, but their aim and their objective is the same. And I cannot speak for the Spanish context, but in Portugal it's working now. In 6 years they went from 1 deputy to 60 deputies, and that is really, really scary. So this is a brief comparison of both markets. They share some things in common: populist communication styles, amplification across platforms, emotional and anti-elite rhetoric. Spain market is more mature, polarized, and fragmented, and is shaped by nationalism and ideological conflict. Portugal market is a newer and more concentrated ecosystem where disinformation spreads through amplification, but has a protective factor, which is a very high trust in news and media environment. And that is why populists, they are targeting also the traditional and the legacy media. So right-wing populism made a late entrance in Portugal. We thought as early as 2019 that the dictatorship vaccine, we had 48 years of a dictatorship that only ended in 1974. We thought that had a protective effect, because we all remember the dictatorship, but that protective effect, unfortunately, it's gone. Our populist leader is responsible for more than 80% of circulating disinformation, and the resultant game of these tactics is normalized, radical, unspeakable content, bringing it to the sphere of consensus. So the right-wing populism discourse has brought into mainstream media subjects and ways of speaking that were taboo and impossible to bring to mainstream just a few years ago. This is eroding democratic institutions and media trust. So it is no coincidence that trust in news is falling, and Portugal went from first to seventh in just 6 years. This disinformation is becoming harder and harder to debunk, especially because the amplification and the cross-circulation in several platforms. So nowadays we have blatant racist and xenophobic content, and this is now common in public sphere. Also, uncivil behavior. Our parliament has suffered with deputies who don't respect basic norms of politeness and civil behavior, and it's very, very sad to see what's happening there. Also, multi-platform amplification and sheer volume of disinformation, now powered by AI and bots, make fact-checking and other debunking strategies increasingly inefficient. So more platform regulation could be effective, but self-regulation, for me, it's not a believable strategy now, because the economic model that underlies platforms, and apparently the billionaires' interests, who went from don't be evil to I won't pay taxes, don't bother asking, this makes it a less probable scenario that platform will self-regulate. That's why I say the challenge now, it's a democratic challenge and not a technological challenge. Combating disinformation disorder requires more than fact-checking. We need stronger journalism, stronger media literacy, institutional trust, and democratic resilience for reduce the appeal of these polarizing narratives. Hopefully, but a lot of damage has been done yet by these populist leaders. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.